All right, welcome back to another video. If you're an agent owner or a coach above 25K a month with your offer right now, I promise you that if you watch this video all the way until the end and you actually take action on what I go through in this video, not only will you be able to see an uptick in the volume of calls that you book every single month for your offer, but more importantly, you'll be able to see an uptick in the quality of calls that you book every single month for your offer. Again, if you actually take action. Now, why am I so confident in saying this? Well, it's simple. Just recently, let me tell you a quick story about the calls that we've been generating for our offer and kind of how we're running ads right now, right, to generate all those calls. And to be honest, by the way, this video doesn't matter if you're running ads or if you're sending emails or if you're doing like organic or anything like that. It's not necessarily a platform specific change or tactic. It's more just messaging overall and kind of the overall approach to like how you get the calls, not necessarily run ads or whatever, right? We run ads for ourselves. We run ads for all of our clients. It is what I recommend, but again, as I say, it doesn't really matter what platform you're on specifically. Now, so just a very quick backstory on like why I'm creating this video. Okay, last month we booked in, I think it was about 150 calls in total. Okay, and this month the volume of our calls has been a lot slower. I'll be very transparent. I'm not going to sit here and say, you know, it's amazing every single month. You have your good months, you have your slower months, and this month we've not booked in as many calls. And I was thinking, I was like, why are we not booking in as many calls this month, right? Like, what's the cause, right? Because the effect. Okay, the effect is a lower volume of calls, right? But obviously there's something, that's the effect. There's a cause to that effect. And so I was trying to figure out what is the cause to the lack of volume, because we're spending the same amount on ads this month. We've spent the same, but the volume hasn't been there. So I was like, okay, let me go back through the funnel. Let me see what metrics have caused the volume of calls to drop. And I was going through and I looked at our ads and I realized, like, you know, I went pretty specific. I looked at the cost per click and stuff. I realized actually our ads are performing better this month. So we got a better cost per click than we did last month. Obviously you can argue that maybe quality of the clicks has dropped, which has ultimately resulted in the volume of calls to drop. But you know, let's that aside, right? The ads are performing better this month is a lower cost per click. I looked at last month's opt-in rate on my in my funnel. Last month's opt-in rate was 22%. Okay, and bear in mind we require name, email, and phone number. And also you can't opt into our funnel if you put a fake phone number in, because I've got a code in there which basically forces you to put in at least the correct number. And so 22% on that is actually pretty good, right? So 22% opt-in, and I looked at our opt-in rate this month, and our opt-in rate this month was 13%. So it like dropped over 50%, right? That's not a 10% drop, that's a 50% drop, right? And so that's obviously what is the cause to the lack of volume of calls. So then I was thinking, I was like, why has it changed? I don't honestly know why it dropped so much, because I'd changed nothing, like nothing has changed. And so maybe it was just like a natural ebb and flow, but I was like, oh, that's, you know, whatever. So what did I do as a result? What did I do as a solution to that problem? Well, what I did is I removed the opt-in page from a new set of ads that I launched. So I launched a new CBO in the ad account, $300 a day, and I went straight to VSL. So there's no opt-in. Now, typically we like to get opt-ins because we dial all the leads, and you know, we get a really good booking rate from just dialing all the leads. However, I was like, let me try and remove that, go direct to VSL. Anyway, we launched the ads direct to VSL. We are now currently running at $150 cost per book call. Now that's Australian, so I think it's about $100-ish USD. So really cheap cost per book call, right? Bear in mind, this is for a 10K offer, so ridiculously profitable. And more importantly, the quality of the calls that have come through at the moment, I think we've got about 8 calls so far, and every single call has been above with an intern or a coach who is above 25K a month. Every single call. So we're at 100% qualified booked call rate, right? Which is crazy because again, our qualification is somebody who's doing above 25K a month. And so that prompted me to create this video, because what I want to go through with you in this video is the 2 reasons why you can't get more qualified booked calls for your offer. This kind of builds off the back of like the change that I made in my ads literally last week. But also I'm gonna go through a couple other things that nobody else is talking about, but I really dedicate the success of our ads and our clients' ads as well, because we do done for you ads for our clients as well, where we just run their ads and we actually guarantee 50 calls in the next 90 days for all of our clients. And the success of those ads, I dedicate that to what I'm gonna show you in this video. And I promise you, if you make these small changes to your booking process and your sales process, you're gonna see a direct uptick, again, as I say, in the volume of calls, as well as the quality of the calls in which you book for your offer. So let's jump into it. Now, number 1, okay? The first thing is the actual offer itself, okay? And I see this all the time, okay? There's a few things that are surrounded offer, or that surround your offer that tie with, again, the volume as well as the quality of calls that you generate. So number 1 is a lack of resonance with your ideal client. What do I mean by this? Well, obviously, in any niche that you operate in, right? You're gonna have your niche And then typically you're going to have a segment of that niche who is your actual ideal client, right? So for example, let me use an example that everybody understands, e-com, okay? The e-commerce agency niche, right? Very, very saturated, very, very, broad. Everybody's in it, or at least a lot of people are in it. I don't necessarily recommend if you're just starting out to go into that niche because it's very difficult. But let me just use that example. The niche is e-com, okay? But then most people who operate an e-com agency, yes, they operate in the e-com niche, the broad niche overall. However, typically they have an ideal client, which is somebody who's doing above 100K a month, for example, right? So like we have one client who he only works with $2 to $4 million e-commerce companies, right? So a lot more established. They're doing anywhere between 150 and 300K a month. And his offer is that he scales them to $1 million a month, okay? Now, even though he operates in the e-com niche, he's got a specific segment. And what you need, and when I talk about here, lack of like your offer doesn't resonate with your ideal client, what I mean is your offer doesn't resonate with the segment of the industry of your niche that you actually want to go after. For example, if you reach out to, okay, this is really important. If you reach out to a company who's doing $5 million a year, okay, and you guarantee to double their revenue in the next 30 days, or you don't pay, that offer is never, ever, ever gonna work, ever. Even though the offer is seemingly really powerful. Double your revenue in 90 days, or you don't pay. But what's the core fundamental issue of that offer? It's not believable. If somebody's doing 5 million, they do not believe that anyone, and quite rightly so, because it's probably gonna be impossible, to double that 5 million to 10 million in a 30-day period. It's never going to happen. However, if you took that same offer and you took it to an e-commerce business doing 10K a month and you guaranteed to double their revenue to 20K a month in the next 30 days, that offer would probably hit, right? So you need to understand who is the specific ideal client that you're going after. Another example of this is if you are, your offer is centered around increasing, we'll guarantee to increase your ROAS or you don't pay. We'll guarantee to make you more profitable from your ads or you don't pay, right? That's another kind of typical offer in the e-commerce agency space. That would work. But again, you need to go more specific with your actual target audience, the segment of your audience. What do I mean by that? Well, what I would do is I would just tweak that offer slightly. If you want to go after people who are doing 100K a month and typically they're doing, let's say, you want to go after people who are doing 100K a month and you want to go after people who are also running ads and they're spending at least 20 to 30K a month on ads, okay? That's your ideal client. Well, you could take that same offer of we'll guarantee an increase on your current ROAS or you don't pay. You could take that same offer and just expand on it a little bit and it's instantly going to target your ideal client more. What do I mean by that? Well, if you went, we'll guarantee to increase your daily ad spend by $1,000 a day while it's increasing your ROAS or you don't pay, that's going to instantly hit better. Number one, because it's more specific, right? So not only is it more of a tangible outcome than just a broad will increase your ROAS, but also you're going to get better qualified calls with that offer. Why? Because you're saying specifically we'll increase your ad spend by 1,000 a day, or we'll help you scale past 2,000 a day in ad spend whilst maintaining a profitable ROAS. That then implies that the people who are going to resonate with that, that implies that you only want to speak to people who are already spending 1,000 or 2,000 a day, but they can't scale profitably. So that's like another subtle targeting mechanism that you can leverage, and that's all from the offer, right? Most people try and do their targeting and this is part of the next point that the second reason here, and really what the second reason is kind of centered around is most people try and target through the audiences that they target on their ads. If they're running ads to acquire clients, they try and do their targeting through the ad set. The targeting does not exist at the ad set level. It's all through these other factors, essentially, okay? So the next one is you need to factor in your market sophistication and your ideal client sophistication, okay? So let me give you another example using the e-commerce example. One of my clients is somebody who only works with e-commerce companies doing 2K a month, and his offer is that he guarantees to scale that person to 10K a month in the next 90 days. That's his offer, okay? And he does really well with it. However, his target ideal client sophistication is very, very, very different to, as I say, my other client who only works with $2 to $5 million companies, and he scales them to $1 million a month. Same niche, same market, right? It's both e-com. However, it's a very, very, very different ideal client in both situations. And so you need to factor in what their sophistication is, or what their level of sophistication is surrounding your offer, whatever your offer is, right? Factor that in, okay? The next one is speaks to needs instead of wants. Okay. And what I mean by this is like most people try and speak to needs instead of speaking to the wants of the market. Let me explain this a little bit more in detail using a quote from Eugene Schwartz, right? Who said this quote, okay? So you want to channel existing desire. You don't want to create the desire, okay? This is, as I say, the quote from Eugene Schwartz, right? You want to tap a single overwhelmingly desire existing in the hearts of thousands of people who are actively seeking to satisfy it at this very moment, okay? You need to figure out with your ideal client, what is the pre-existing desire of your ideal client and like your market, and just more specifically your ideal client. What's the pre-existing desire? Find whatever that is. Every single market, every single niche, there's always going to be a pre-existing desire, right? You want to find what that is, and then you want to channel your offer into that pre-existing desire. You do not want to create the desire, okay? Now, how does this apply more like specifically to like kind of what you're doing? Well, I see this all the time, okay? Most people try and sell the needs of the market. So for example, with me, what's my offer? My offer is we'll guarantee you 50 sales calls in the next 90 days or you don't pay. That's my offer, okay? Now, what do we actually help with? What do we actually help our clients with on the back end? Well, we help them create VSLs. We help them create the funnels. Obviously, we run their ads for them and actually get we generate the calls for our clients. But we also help with their sales team. We help with their setters. We help with their closers. We help with their fulfillment. We help with recruiting. We help with offer creation. We help with positioning and all that type of stuff, right? Copywriting, right? All this type of stuff that we help with in the back end. However, all the stuff we help with in the back end is based on the needs the things that they actually need in order to get the results that they want to get. However, if you look at my ads, what's the only thing I speak to in my ads? Sales calls, more sales calls, guaranteed sales calls. We'll guarantee 50 sales calls in the next 90 days. That's the only thing I speak to in my ads. Why is that? Well, because the needs is all that stuff I mentioned before that we deliver in the back end. But the wants, the wants is kind of tied into the pre-existing desire, right? The pre-existing desire that's already existing in the market that I go after, which is agency owners and coaches above 25K a month, the pre-existing desire of that market is that they just want more calls. They don't necessarily want to work on their offer. They don't necessarily want to create funnels or run ads or do this or do that, or have closers or understand copywriting or understand how to recruit better and understand fulfillment structures and all this type of. They don't necessarily want to know that stuff. That's not the core desire of the market. The core desire of my market is more calls. And so what did I do? I repositioned my entire offer around the desire of the market, and what that obviously kind of resulted in me doing was channeling my offer into the desire. Most people flip that. So most people start with an offer and then they try and channel the desire into their offer, right? They flipped it on its head. And so what are they then trying to do at that point? Then what they're trying to do is create desire in the market, which is almost impossible unless you have millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to use in advertising budget. Because that's very hard to do. To create desire, right, is very, very hard to do. Think about Henry Ford way back when he brought out the first car. The existing desire in that day and age was, if you was to ask the people what did they want, they would never have said a car because it didn't exist. They would have said, I want a quicker horse. That was the pre-existing desire in the market, right? However, what did Henry Ford do? Well, because he's one of the best, obviously, entrepreneurs, businessmen, who's ever lived, he created desire in the market, which was to, desire a car. And then he produced the car, right? However, unless you're Henry Ford, it's very difficult to do. And there's no point in trying. Well, you could try. Of course, you could try. But the way easier approach is to find the pre-existing desire and channel your offer into the desire. Hopefully that makes sense. That's one thing that I see not a lot of people do. Okay, so now using that same idea, going back to the fact that most people and their offer, it just doesn't resonate with our ideal client. Well, as I said before, if you were to go after your ideal client was a 100K a month e-commerce business who's spending 20 to 30K a month on ads, what is the pre-existing desire of that market, right? And I've not done too much digging into this, but I just kind of know off the top of my head roughly. One of their issues is that they're trying to scale their budget, their ad spend, but every time they scale, their ad spend either drops, stagnates, things blow up, whatever. So they're kind of capped at a certain daily ad spend. So what would I do if I was to go into that market? my offer would be entirely centered around, we'll guarantee to increase your ad spend past 1,500 a day, 2,000 a day, 500 a day, 10,000 a day. Whoever the ideal client is, you tailor it to them specifically and where they're at specifically. And then what you do is you basically guarantee that as the outcome. We'll guarantee to scale your ad spend past 1,000 a day whilst maintaining a profitable ROAS. Or you could even take it one step further and go, whilst increasing your ROAS. So what are we doing? Finding the pre-existing desire, channeling the offer into that desire. Hopefully that makes sense. That's the first big thing that I see. And again, by the way, all of these things are just based off of what after working with like over 100 clients now who are all agency owners, coaches above 25K a month, as well as with my own ads and my own stuff, like just from what I see from my data, this is always the first thing that I work with one-on-one with our clients is figuring this, like what's the pre-existing desire? How can we change your offer to suit that desire? And as I say, the reason this is always the issue is because we always have to change the offer, which means initially the offer has got nothing to do with what the market actually wants. It's typically centered around what they need. And so I'm pretty certain if you're watching this video right now and you're not getting the calls you want, it's because your offer isn't tied directly to the pre-existing desire. Hopefully that makes sense. Moving on to the second one, which is targeting through alternative routes, okay? So as I said before, most people try and get results. This is more tied to, I would say, running ads, but you can still apply it to your organic marketing, your emails and whatnot. But most people I see, they try and target or increase the quality of the calls that they are generating. They try and do that through targeting a different interest on Facebook. Now, let me just tell you, that doesn't exist. Granted, there is certain ad sets that might perform better than others, but generally speaking, it's not, you're not going to go from if your ideal client is like with me, if my ideal client, which it is somebody who's doing above 25K a month, for me to go from targeting one audience to another, that's not going to result, if my ads were only generating beginners, right? The only people who are booking in calls with me were people who were at $0 a month. They have no agency, they have no coaching business, they have nothing, and they want to get into creating a coaching business, for example, right? If that was the only people who are booking in calls with my ads, and say I was targeting whatever, entrepreneurship, right? Whatever it is. If I then changed my targeting, just my targeting from entrepreneurship to whatever, right? Business owner, I don't know, whatever it is, right? I just changed the interest itself. Okay, that would never, ever, ever cause my results to go from only broke people who are, just starting out, they don't have anything, they're trying to get into there. That simple change of interest would never, ever result in the people who are booking in calls with me to go from people who are at zero, have no agency, have no coaching business, to somebody who's doing 100K a month consistently. It would never cause that result, that difference in quality, right? Just by changing the interest. So the question then comes, how do you change the quality? Well, you do it through alternative routes. Now, as I say, most target through the audiences they select. We never do that. We do it through a couple of different ways, essentially. Number one is calling them out. You'll be surprised at how many people just like at the start of their ads, they don't call out exactly who they want to work with. If you look at all of our ads, and this is such an easy change, this is what I was saying at the start of the video. If you actually take action on this stuff, although it may seem, quote, simple, I don't know if you perceive this as being simple or not, but it's stuff that nobody does, and it has the biggest impact on our results, on our clients' results, etc. Okay, call out your audience. Like, who do you want to work with? Call them out. Like, that's such a simple change to make. You look at all of my ads, I say marketing agencies above 25K a month, coaches above 25K a month. That is the first 3 words on my ads every single time. It's the same for our clients, right? We've got one client who's works with a law firm kind of space, and he only works with law firm owners who have 1 to 10 attorneys under them. So we call them out, law firm owners with 1 to 10 attorneys. Like, it's just so black and white, right? Another one is problems. So again, as I said before, different segments, although you're operating in one niche, right? Again, easy niche to look at is kind of like the agency owner niche, right? And I know this obviously like the back of my hand because we operate in this niche. The agency owner niche, okay? Even though the niche is agency owners, again, with me, I want to work with people who are above 25K a month. People who are above 25K a month, they're at 50K a month, 100K, 200K a month. They have very, very, very different problems to those who are at 0 a month with their agency. And so you can target through the problems that you speak to. Perfect example. In one of my ads, what do I say in the lead? So I have my offer. I call out who I want. I state the offer. Bear in mind, my offer is actually subtly centered around my ideal client as well, because my ideal client if you was to ask them what do they want, they will never say, I want more clients. They won't say that. They'll say, I want more booked calls. I want a system to where I can consistently generate qualified calls on my calendar. That's what they want, because in my prospect's mind, in order for them to get the ultimate thing that they want, which is obviously clients, there's one roadblock that's stopping them, which is calls. They need more calls. They need more qualified calls every day on their calendar. So what's my offer centered around? Guaranteeing more qualified calls for their offer, right? But also, this is also very subtle, but it's very effective. The issue with my ideal client is not that they can't sign more clients. That's not the issue. The issue is that they can't get more calls on their calendar. And the reason they think that that's actually the issue, which is lack of calls, not lack of clients, it's lack of calls, is because in my market's mind, when they get on the call with a qualified prospect, they can close that person at a relatively high close rate and turn them into a client. So the conversion from a booked call to a client isn't the problem. The problem is just getting more booked calls, right? And so in my ads, I subtly speak to that problem. I go, let's face it, you know that when you get a qualified prospect on the phone or on Zoom, you can close them. Your cold close rate right now is probably at 35 to 45%, but the issue is that you're just not getting enough qualified calls put onto the calendar every single day, right? So what am I doing there as well, which is again very subtle? Well, I'm subtly targeting the problem of my ideal client, because guess what? People who are at zero with their agency, people who are at 10K a month with their coaching business, whatever, typically they're not currently closing at 35 to 45%. And so by me implying that whilst you're closing at 35 to 45% right now, the issue is that you're just not getting enough calls on the calendar, by me kind of, putting that into my prospect's mind, I'm subtly further targeting who I want to be speaking to, right? This is obviously going to then not resonate with somebody who's only at zero, who's never had a sales call in the past. I don't want to work with that person, and they're not going to resonate with my ad. Something else that I do that's quite subtle as well is I'll imply how many calls they're currently generating. Okay, so here, as I say, I imply current circumstance. So like, I'm kind of jumping ahead here a bit, but one thing I do in my ads as well, like one of my best performing pieces of copy that's running right now, which you can go to my ad library and look at it. I'll go, what's right now, you're probably sending hundreds of emails or thousands of emails a month. You're spending thousands of dollars a month on ads, yet that's only resulting in you taking 40, 50 or 60 sales calls a month. So again, what am I implying there? I'm implying their current circumstance that they are currently getting 40, 50, 60 sales calls a month, but it's not enough for them to scale to 250, 500K a month, whatever it is that they want to do. So that's again, me further targeting without actually going to the audience level and targeting who's seen the ad. I'm just taking everybody who is seeing the ad and I'm I'm hyper resonating with a certain type of person, and that certain type of person is exactly who my ideal client is. Also desires. So again, as I say, like with my ideal client, their desire isn't more clients, right? If I was to guarantee you 3 new clients in the next 30 days, for my ideal client who is doing 100K to 200K a month, 3 new clients, 10 new clients in the next 30 days, they're like, whatever. They don't really care about that. What they care about is a predictable system and scalable system that'll routinely put qualified calls into their calendar. That's what they care about, right? So their desires are different. Whereas somebody who's at 0 a month, if I was to run an ad and said, well, I'll guarantee you 3 new clients in the next 90 days, all at 2K per month each, somebody who's at 0 a month is going to be like, oh my God, this is an amazing offer, right? Because their desires are different, okay? Another example of this as well is, if you guarantee you only want to work with $10 million companies, right? And you guarantee to double their business in the next 12 months, or maybe not the next 12 months, you double their business in the next 30 days or you don't pay. That's just like, it's so unbelievable that they're not going to resonate with it, because their desire isn't to double in the next 30 days. They probably physically couldn't double their business in the next 30 days. Even if you could actually double it, everything would break, right? So that's not what their desire is. What's their desire? Well, if you guaranteed them a 20% lift in revenue in the next 6 months, they would be super into that, right? So you got to figure out what's the pre-existing desires of your specific ideal client, not of the niche that you're operating in, but the specific client that you actually want to work with, right? Offer, kind of already touched on that. And then as I say, the final thing here is implying current circumstance, which as I mentioned is super important. So this is basically another really powerful way to target exactly who you want to speak to. Currently, you're at 25K a month, but the issue is that you can't get to 100K a month. Currently, you're spending $1,000 a day on ads, but the problem is that every time you try and scale past $1,000 a day, your ROAS drops, right? And by the very nature of you implying where they're currently at, you're basically disqualifying everybody else who's not at that level. So everybody who's below that level, right? Everybody who's below that level is not going to resonate with the ad because you're saying you're at this spot, you want to get to this spot, we can help you. Everybody who's below that is not typically going to resonate, right? Because you're implying exactly who you're speaking to. Okay, so that's another huge part to targeting and increasing the quality of calls. Again, as I said, it does not come down to the targeting that you know, if you're running ads right now, it doesn't come down to the targeting. Trust me, the quality of your calls does not come down to the targeting. It comes down to targeting through these alternative routes, the messaging overall. I think the biggest one here as well is the offer and making sure that your offer actually taps into a pre-existing desire. When I really understood that, literally when I understood this, I changed my entire offer and the back end, the way I presented it, to tap into the pre-existing desire. As I say, most people get it flipped. Most people create their offer first, right? They create what they want to do, and then they go to the market and try and channel the desire into their offer. And they've literally flipped it on its head. You need to look at what's already there and change your offer to suit what's already there, not try and change the desire in the market to suit your offer. Got to flip it around, right? So hopefully this video helped. I really think that if you rewatch this video again and you actually take action on what I'm saying here. I mean, I know you'll get better results than what you're currently getting because when I changed this, it literally skyrocketed our ads. It skyrocketed our clients' ads as well, the same thing. So yeah, hopefully this was useful. If it was, make sure you go ahead, like, subscribe, all that stuff. And by the way, if you are an agency owner or a coach who's above 25K a month, we'll actually guarantee you 50 sales calls in the next 90 days, or you don't pay. So if you're interested in that, you want to scale up your volume of calls and by extension, scale up to, you know, 100, 200, 300K a month, depending on where you're at, click the link in the description and book in a call with us and we'll see how we can help you. As I say, we do this pretty much all done for you. So we run your ads, we create your copy, we do, you know, all of this stuff we do done for you. And then obviously we work with you on your offer and making sure that it's in alignment with obviously what you want to do, but also what the market actually wants, you know what I mean? So if you're interested, you're an intern or a coach above 25K a month, click the link in the description. With that being said, hopefully this video in and of itself was useful and I'll see you